going on? Welcome to Podcast Revived, episode number 6. I am your host, as always, Shane Craig, and joining me is the lovely Jessi Craig.
Hi.
Guys, we have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Marvel's Avengers game. We're going to talk about the presence of women in video games, what that means, and we're going to give the next in the top 10 games of the decade, which you will have to wait till the end of the show in order to hear what game is next, but it's one of my favorite games of all time, so excited to talk about that game for the umpteenth time. But before we go any further, let's stop and thank our first sponsor of the show. It is a YouTube channel. You're going to find it under DJB, D-E-E-J-A-Y space B-E-E. It's hosted by David. He's already got a pretty good little following on his YouTube channel where he covers European football. I'm going to call it European football instead of soccer. He may find this insulting because to me, football's football. I'm an American. I'm from America.
Oh.
So I don't know a lot of... Look, I know a little bit about soccer. You know, like it was one of those games you'd play like when I was in school. You go out onto the playground and you play the soccer. Sure, I don't know as much as he does. But what I do know is that as a sports fan myself, it's really plainly obvious to see when someone else is passionate about sports. And he's definitely got that going for him. He's got that infectious sort of passion. He's got about 1,400 subs on YouTube, and he's done it very quickly. So if you love the sport of football and you want to hear an honest, real opinion on the sport, I can tell you exactly where to go. Personally, as I watched my American football team get ignored and counted out by all of the mainstream media all year long as we bulldozed our way to the AFC Championship, I can totally understand why people would want to turn to YouTube and sort of get away from these so-called journalists, these men and women that sit behind their fancy desks and they espouse nonsensical bullshit.
Wearing their fancy suits.
Their suits and their makeups.
I was going to say all the makeup.
It's just, and they don't, and look, a lot of them don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I imagine it's like that for every sport that I pay attention to. So it's probably like that for this sport as well. So go check them out on YouTube. Like I said, you're going to search for D-E-E-J-A-Y, all in one word, like DJ, B, spelled B-E-E. You can also find a link to his YouTube channel, scaryifliteral.com/friends of SIL, or just scaryifliteral.com and find the Friends of SIL link up at the top. He's got a blog post there that's got a video embedded and a link directly to his channel. So go check Daniel out. Tell me what you think. So let's talk about this Marvel's Avengers game. I'm kind of intrigued by this. We were watching some footage, some gameplay of it the other day. I think we watched Jack Fraggs play it, and then I think we watched Alana Pierce play a little bit of it maybe. And we kind of there's a first off, the game looks kind of fun. I like the idea of sort of... I've always enjoyed like co-op beat 'em up kind of games.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, basically like you're picking one of the Avengers and you're running through these missions cooperative style. Almost reminds me if you played the Lego games.
Yeah.
From back in the day.
Yeah, it really does feel like that.
We were just running around beating stuff up. Those games are fun. Cooperative beat 'em up kind of games are fun. So I'm intrigued by it. There's something about it that maybe if I felt it, maybe it would feel differently. But there's something about it that doesn't quite scream $60 game to me. Maybe that's something that I feel like there's going to be microtransactions and things like that as they go forward. My take is that it seems like they're going to try to continually like add new Avengers and new missions and kind of make it like a games of service kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if that's going to be your thing, like maybe don't charge $60 for it at the game, but whatever. Maybe it's good. I don't know. The reviews aren't out yet. I haven't played yet.
See, that's just a starting price, though.
Sure,
60. I mean,
if there are microtransactions, is that gonna add on to that? But there is something that, as we were watching it, kind of came to our attention, and I'm gonna put a slightly different spin on it. These superhero games, right, where you're playing as a superhero. They seem to be much like in the Arkham series and the Spider-Man games.
Excuse me.
They seem to be beating human beings beyond the point of repair. I'll give you a really good example. In Spider-Man 2, not the movie, but the game on the PS2 GameCube, you could grab a villain, a man, a human, and if you were good, you could get to the top of the Empire State Building.
Oh, no.
And there was this move you could do where you could like if you ever watch wrestling, like a pile driver, where you jump and you put their head like at your knees, and then you just kind of sit down with their head crushing into the ground. You could get all the way to the top of the Empire State Building, and you could, with this man, and you could jump off of it and pile drive him all the way to the street below. And it's like, first off, Spider-Man would just pop up like nothing. He'd be like, it's fine. Didn't hurt him at all. But like, that man,
He's dead now.
he's not just dead. Like, there's nothing left of him. Like, his feet are now in the same his feet are occupying the same physical space as his head.
That's
like,
messed
there's
up.
no room for him left. Spider-Man's like, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Just just splattering people on the pavement.
Oh.
And I always thought that was funny, like in the Arkham games, it would do that slow-mo X-ray thing where it's like, oh, you shattered his spine. It's like, he's like, don't worry, he's not dead. Well, he's a cripple.
No killing.
No killing. You severed his spinal column.
Uh-huh.
He's fine.
Yep.
I don't think he's fine. And sometimes they'd be laying on the ground and they're in some kind of like yoga pose where their feet are up next to their ears.
Yeah.
And he's like, no killing. You wadded that man up like a piece of garbage and threw him into the waste bin. He's dead. If he's not dead, he probably wishes that he was.
So it's funny that you're bringing this up because I think I was making some comments as we were watching this this gameplay, because I think Jack was playing as Thor,
and he's hitting people
with
with a giant hammer. And I reacted. I said, if I just took a hammer and hit somebody with it, I don't even have to be a god to hit somebody with a sledgehammer, and they're dead. I've killed them. And if Thor does it, they're like so dead.
Well, see, I recorded some notes as we were watching this, and when we were watching Thor hitting these people with hammers, I said, how much does Thor have to pull back not to kill people with this hammer?
Yeah, I mean,
or his lightning?
He has to just ever so gently just kind of dink them on the head. Boop.
And they're they have broken rib cage.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
They're, any amount, like, there's only one sort of damage that a hammer can do to a person's body, and it's not good. It's not like
we applaud this guy for things that people go to prison for.
He's beating the living shit out of people, redneck style. If it was
redneck
if it
style.
was a claw hammer,
That's Florida man shit.
yeah, it's like, oh no, it's Mjolnir. If it was like a claw hammer, like a ball peen hammer, we'd be like, this guy's crazy.
No, it's just a block of like
some
super
sort
steel.
of magical metal that is so heavy that no one can lift it.
and you're hitting people in the chest
raking
with it.
Raking it against the flesh of humans. Like, it can only hurt you in one way, you know? It's like you can't shoot a guy gently. It's like, it doesn't work that way. If you shoot them, you've shot them.
Yeah.
I don't understand how these superheroes manage to not kill these. Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, punching people.
So for him, is that Hulk slamming people on the ground repeatedly?
Yeah, grab them by the legs. He just bounced them off the ground.
Yeah, you know that these people are like, they're not dying because it's Disney superhero crap. So no, just, leave them in a state where they're going to be in a hospital bed for the rest of their lives.
They're jelly now.
Yeah. Also, severely brain damaged.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Some other thoughts that I had, which I thought I would bring up. So, which superheroes have confirmed kills and how many?
Who is the most murderous superhero?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's at a certain point. So they did a storyline about this. I think it was the Red Hood storyline for Batman and their little movie where he was killing people.
Okay.
It was like, why are you fucking around with this stuff? Just kill them.
Eh.
They're bad people.
Just kill them.
And okay, so like, why is it that in these sorts of games, in these sorts of movies, in these sorts of, you'd call them embodiments of a power fantasy, like, it would not be nearly as satisfying if Batman swoops in and he disarms the guy and then he ties him up, throws him in the corner, and the guy's just like, you got me again. And then he turns and he's just throwing like ropes at people's legs and just tying them up, and nobody's even taking any damage at all.
But that'd be like sufficient, though. It'd be like
It would
weird.
be.
We need a kung fu hero like Jackie Chan. Like, he's not killing people.
It'd be 100%. He's beating him up with a dry eraser.
He's just slapping him in the face with a chair.
With a fish or something he found.
Yep.
But that would be totally sufficient to just tie them up. But if we played that game without any sort of impact, we'd be like, it's kind of lame. I want to cripple them.
It's because we want violence, but we don't want the guilt. We also don't want to admit to boomers that video games are violent.
So why? I guess that's the question I have: is why is it that we, as a species, why do we crave the violence? Why do we crave the violence fantasy, but we don't crave the consequences? We were up last night until about 1 a.m. watching a UFC event. Mm-hmm. We crave the violence, but when it's over, there's no consequences, really. I mean, look, there's money, there's pride, there's these sorts of things.
Injuries.
But no one dies.
Yeah.
I mean, the consequences are again, I don't want to minimize them. I mean, people get hurt, but no one dies.
Right.
So we're acting out the fantasy of this level of violence, but we're like, ugh, consequences though.
Yeah, you're getting right up on that edge and then just not really jumping over. Yeah, I think that that's like my question. It's like, how are we really justifying that these are superheroes, but they're doing things that are
it doesn't make
really
any sense.
Like, another thought I had that I recorded: how many enemies have died due to extensive injuries or like repercussions of their injuries?
Well, so I mean, in canon, realistically, it would be a lot. In canon, it would be very few, and I think that gets to another even deeper question of like, they can kill Thanos, and everyone's like, yeah, you can kill Thanos.
That's fine.
But if one of like Thanos's, and I guess Thanos's minions too could be killed because they were like non-humanoid, right?
Yeah, so I guess that's why it was okay, was because they weren't humans.
Right. But if Thanos has like an underling that's humanoid, like what percentage of evil do you have to be before it's okay for someone to cut you in half long ways? Where's the line? It's like, no, you can't kill him. He's only 70% evil. You must subdue him.
No, he's got 2 arms and 2 legs. You
2
can't,
eyes, a nose, and a mouth.
Don't kill him.
Not killable. Looks too much like my friend John.
But if he looks like an orc, slice and dice, my friend.
Yeah, I guess. Like, there's a slight change from humanoid to not humanoid enough, and then you can kill them.
Speciesism. That's a word.
Guys, his ears are a little big. I think it's cool to kill him. Got kind of an underbite.
He's green.
Fucking kill him. Fucking kill him.
Kill him.
We don't think about this shit like this.
I do.
But that really, we as a culture.
Okay.
But it really, it really is kind of true though. We're totally cool with killing things that
monsters.
Oh, he's a monster.
That was my air quote. Monsters.
Well, let's move on to another potential hotbed of controversy here real quick. There's a news report that came out just a little bit ago, and it basically, very great reporter, Jason Schreier, one of the few people in the video games industry that might actually be a reporter. he reported on, I think this was for Bloomberg. He actually wrote this for, and it basically was detailing how Ubisoft's their sort of working culture could be seen as being hostile towards women. It had, things being said like apparently on the newer Assassin's Creed. Is the new one? Is the new one Odyssey? What's the new Assassin's Creed game coming out? At any rate, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the people making the game apparently wanted the protagonist to just be a female character.
Okay.
They were going to do this in Unity, and they were told that's a lot of extra production work to make a female character. We'll do it next time.
Wait, what?
Right. So then they
What?
then they did it again, and they wanted to make the protagonist be, a female. And apparently they were told, well, there needs to be a male option too, because the phrase that was used in this article was that, quote, women don't sell.
Oh.
So they didn't want to have just a woman be the protagonist.
Oh, okay.
So I guess there's two layers to this question for me. Layer number one would be, if women as protagonists in games don't sell, why would that be? And then two, how does that get addressed? Because,
yeah, but can they prove that though? Because
right.
we have plenty of female protagonists that do sell and have sold.
And it's interesting. I mean, Hellblade comes to mind recently. Like that game must have done relatively well because they're getting sequels.
And that's a
and
really
ports.
non-toxic, or non-problematic protagonist. Also.
Yeah. I mean, there have been. I mean, there have been. I mean, look at The Last of Us sold really well. That's
Tomb Raider.
Tomb Raider.
Tomb Raider's selling for has sold for
a long time.
For a long time, for other reasons other than it's a powerful female. Obviously, people played because she was wearing booty shorts and a tank top, but that does sell.
Boobs.
So women only sell when we want them to sell because they sell a lot.
So, I guess the question then becomes, if this isn't grounded in reality, does this just sound like, stubborn, old-fashionedness? Yeah,
it's not. That's not a true statement because we have examples of them selling
Bayonetta, Metroid.
Yeah, there's what was the one? I literally was just thinking of it. I could probably
Horizon.
Yeah, Horizon. People love Aloy.
So, I mean, it's clear that that's not objectively true. So it may perhaps this is a holdover to, the idea that video games are a hobby for boys, and maybe these guys,
I think that's what it is,
grew up with that ideal in their brain and don't want to let it go. It sounds like things are changing. It sounds like this report was kind of done in a way to say, shed some light on this, and that things are beginning to change. But definitely not something that you want to hear out of one of the largest studios on planet Earth.
I think it's telling us their personal, or somebody in that company's overarching personal bias is that they don't feel like a female
maybe what they're
lead
saying
character.
Is, I don't want to play as a female.
Yeah, I don't want to play as a female, or I don't think that a female could be the hero in my game that I'm making. They don't feel like it's realistic for a female lead, I guess, in their game.
I personally, I'm one of those strange people that whenever I play a game that has a choice, an option to be male or female, I tend to pick female, and I don't really know why. I haven't really thought about it too deeply, but I tend to think that the female characters, when they're done correctly, are more interesting, and I think a lot of the time it might be because female characters are allowed to show more emotion. They're allowed to be more vulnerable, and you can take this as a negative, but I kind of take it as a positive because I'm so sick of playing macho, I'm the big strong man.
Right.
I don't feel anything but anger.
Right.
It's boring.
Yeah.
I don't want to play that character. So seeing someone you know, experience. I mean, look at the Tomb Raider reboot. I mean, she was, you know, at times I mocked the constant whimpering, but
it's horrible.
But the fact that she was allowed to experience loss and regret and you know, a
And
lot of these,
shame.
we need to be in a world where the male protagonist can sort of have the same breadth of experience as well, and we need to stop stigmatizing you know, the gender roles in that sense. You know, people.
No, it's sexist both ways.
People are people, and people have myriad emotional experiences. I remember playing a game called Spec Ops: The Line, and that game was incredible because it was this. It looked like a third person action war game, but it totally wasn't. It went into this soldier's sort of slow mental decline as he became, you know, more and more regretful of his actions in the theater of war, and he began kind of, you know, losing grip on reality. And I was like, man, like taking what looks like a tropey third-person war game and turning it into something like this was incredible. No one played it because the marketing was terrible. Everyone just thought it was a generic-looking third-person war game, but it wasn't. That's awesome, and that game came out, you know, like a decade ago, and we've not really seen a whole lot of things like that since, and it's a bummer.
Maybe we need to, like you said, get away from the stereotypical lead characters, and maybe game developers need to try more normalized people.
Why do we lean towards tropes so heavily? Is it
because we want to play that, and we want to play as the ideal version of ourselves. If you're playing as a girl, you want to be, you know, attractive, strong, but not too strong. As a guy, you want to be the most masculine macho man ever.
Does this come back to the prior subject, the power fantasy, I wonder?
Probably
in some ways.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's discouraging, but it's good to see things kind of changing. I know that The Last of Us got into trouble because they, you know, people thought they were shoehorning diversity into the game and so forth, but
oh my God, we can't have diverse characters in our games. No.
I would say that, you know, we were watching The Umbrella Academy the last few days, and there's a character with he appears to be pretty heavily on the spectrum, and we were wondering, you know, what role this character would play, because, you know, there's the old adage that if there's, you know, let's use the example of a guitar in the corner in a scene, then by 3 scenes from now, someone better have played that guitar or shouldn't have been in the shot.
Mm-hmm.
What is this character going to, what are they going to serve? And I, you know, when you're speaking about The Last of Us and then putting these, you know, more diverse characters in there, my thing is, you know, look, if it serves the story, if it's there for a reason, if it's driving the plot, if it's doing something like that, I don't really care what you're doing. Like the character in the first Last of Us game, Bill, who, if you read through some of the stuff there, it was not in your face, but it was there to be seen. You could determine that Bill, you know, was in a relationship with a man who had died during the struggle, and totally changed the way you looked at this character, added a lot of depth to him, took him, for me, from being a character that I would have been like, you know, funny character, whatever, to being like, oh no, this dude's went through a lot.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, look at the situation he was in and so forth. And it really adds depth to the character. So I think a lot of it is just old school, you know, hang-ups and backwards minded thinking that hopefully continues to go away. I've got a podcast recommendation to pass along here real quick. It's called Side Project Podcast, and you can find, first off, a link to them. Again, scaryifliteral.com. Check for the Friends of SIL link up at the top. And, so basically, Side Project Podcast is a variety podcast with a comedic touch that tends to focus on gaming, movies, film, cosplay, art, and more. It's created by Chazzy, bringing in a longtime friend, Julio Juicebox Reyes. It's a great nickname.
I love that.
To discuss topics across the gaming industry, the film world, and much more, giving their views and opinions in often quirky ways that will make you wipe your tears as you laugh away the pain and despair that is today's world. If you want to forget about the nonsense going on right outside your window, look no further. Completely ignore all of your responsibilities and specifically tune into the Side Project Podcast. And remember, watching and subscribing on YouTube gets you 100 project points. What are project points? Who knows? Check out youtube.com/Side Project Podcast. And project is spelled Projekt. Make sure you get that right. They're on all the different streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. They're also on Twitter @Side Project Podcast. Check them out to stay up to date, I should say. So like I said, if you check out scaryfliteral.com, Friends of SIL link, there's an episode embedded in a blog post about them. Genuinely funny. These two are actually really, really funny. The intro had me laughing really hard. They've got a really good audio setup. They've got good production quality. These guys are going to be up-and-comers. Check them out if you want to listen to just a genuinely funny podcast. These two are clearly... You know when you listen to a podcast or see a show and two people are clearly like actually good friends in real life and they've got that camaraderie and that sort of chemistry is the word
not
I'm
like
looking
us
for.
at all.
No, not like us at all. Wait, this is just a
Right.
complete train wreck every time we try to do this. They've got that going on and it's really endearing and it's really, really a great listen. So do go check them out. So let's close the show with talking about Metacritic's number 8 game of the decade. I'm going to roll them together because there's a remaster. We were talking about, of course, The Last of Us. It is, if you're going to talk about the decade, you can make the argument that it's my favorite game of the decade. You could make an argument that it might be my favorite game of the ever.
Of the ever.
Possibly. Might be.
Why is it so low on the list?
Well, so Metacritic has it with an average review score of 95.
Wow.
So there are some higher rated games in that. And,
I'm not sure which. Like, I really expected this to be closer to the top.
I mean, we're talking about over the course of a decade. I mean, you know, it's
Exactly.
over a lot of games. There's been a lot of games released.
Mm-hmm.
But so there was I was thinking about a topic that I don't know, maybe we'll revisit, but I was thinking about a topic that could be like, what's our favorite video game antagonist, our favorite bad guy from a video game?
Mm-hmm.
And as I was ruminating on this topic, I thought it might be Joel.
Joel, yeah, because he is a bad guy.
He is unequivocally the villain or a villain in this story. He dooms the world.
He is the villain of the story.
Literally dooms the world to continue in the plague that is in The Last of Us. You're talking about, characters being able to show different emotions and different things like that. Naughty Dog has been on that for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And they've been slowly progressing more and more in that direction. So it's funny to me that people suddenly are upset about this. Like, you've not been paying attention to the trajectory that they've been taking.
They literally state it in... They didn't really state it in Uncharted, but definitely in the sequel. They were like, oh yeah, Nate's kind of a mass murderer. Let's have some self-reflection here.
Yeah.
And then The Last of Us, I mean, they really just... It's subtle. They're not telling you that, but if you don't finish the game and feel like an asshole...
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like
it's epic.
I've said in the past, it's one thing to have a game that has a plot twist in it. It's another thing for the plot twist to start twisting 10 hours before the end, and for you to not even realize that you were actually taking part in it.
Yeah.
And that's what I experienced in The Last of Us. It wasn't until the credits rolled that, spoiler alert, if you've not played The Last of Us, you're like 10 years late on this one. But so if you don't want to hear the ending, then stop listening. But, at the end, Ellie, the question of, are you lying to me, essentially? And his response of no, which is a lie.
A lie.
It kind of shifted the whole game for me. The last 10 hours of gameplay changed, and that's the mark of a great plot twist, is to be able to go, oh, so that was this and this was that, and I was wrong about all of this. And it didn't change it in a way that's worse. It changed it in a way that was better.
Yeah.
And there's little touches in that game where I remember there's a section where Ellie has been taken captive, and you wake up as an injured Joel. And the brilliance here. So they've given you plenty of time to become attached to Ellie. And they've let you play as Ellie, protecting Joel. So now you have a instinct of reciprocity. You know that she's been taken because you've seen it. So you know that you want to hurry through this. They push the pace. You're injured, so you have that kind of wounded dog mentality. On top of that, they started tweaking the AI. I remember there's a portion where I snuck up on a couple people and I hit him with a Molotov.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, as his comrade burned to the ground, the guy, he exclaims to his other friend something to the effect of, "This guy's crazy. Let's get out of here." And they run from me.
Yeah.
And that, of course, pulled out in me the instinct to chase them.
Yeah.
I was no longer playing stealthy. I was like, "You're damn right, I'm fucking crazy, and I'm going to murder every one of you until I get to Ellie."
Yeah.
It pulled that aggression out of you. And by virtue of doing that, it started sort of programming you to be willing to do more and more horrible things to the people that stood in between you and Ellie. Until that ending, when you were willing to, I mean, you murder a doctor. I murdered the nurses. I executed them pointlessly, needlessly, just put them down because they could have been a threat. I didn't know, so I was like, better be safe than sorry. Put a bullet in your brain. And that was the genius of it. I almost said the beauty of it. I guess in a strange sense, it's beautiful storytelling.
It's a dark, beautiful.
You didn't, or I did not realize that's what was happening until the lie was revealed.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, I'm the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
They got me to play the role of the bad guy willingly, and I played it. I played it well. I was the bad guy. Like, I thought back, like, oh, I probably didn't have to kill those nurses.
Yeah.
Those nurses probably would have just cowered there in fear.
Yeah.
Probably was no need for me to kill them. But man, I did. I calmly walked over, put the revolver in their face, and fired. It's like, nope, you're not going to be here for this. You're done. And that was always like my favorite litmus test, was to ask people that finished The Last of Us, did you kill the nurses?
Right.
And I would get different answers. Some people would say, oh, no, they seemed like they were afraid. They didn't seem like they were going to be a problem, so I left them. And then some people would be like, oh, I came in just firing a machine gun and just mowed down everybody.
I think that's what I did. I think I was just like, I think I went in like guns a-blazing.
Yeah, and it's an interesting litmus test because I think it's interesting to me because I feel like the way I did it was potentially worse than just coming in guns a-blazing. Because there's not any deeper thought in it. It's just like, I've killed a bunch of people, I'm going to keep killing a bunch of people. Whereas I walked in, the doctor turns and says, you can't be in here, and he picks up a scalpel. So I'm like, threat. So I at this point I was low on ammo, so I had my revolver left, which was my favorite gun in that game. So I just pulled up the revolver and shot him in the brain, and he hits the ground, and the two nurses are like, oh my God, and they're kind of backed up against the cabinets, and they're kind of cowering. And I kind of stood there for a second, and I kind of observed the room. Ellie's on the table, Nurse is against the wall there. And I thought, well, you know, I don't know that they're not going to be a threat. So I just kind of walked over to him nice and calmly and just took aim and fired, and walked over to the other one and took aim and fired, and then walked over and scooped her up and walked out the door. And, you know, in the moment, you know, you don't think anything of it. You're just like, they're complicit in this. There might have even been some anger there where I'm like, you're complicit in this. You're part of this, and I'm punishing you. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to. It's hard to remember my exact thoughts. But I was 100% playing the role of the bad guy.
Yeah.
You know, like, and you don't see it until the very end. What a brilliantly made game. What an incredible game. It's a shame that I have no interest in playing the second one. Maybe one day I will. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, The Last of Us. Do you have any further thoughts on why this game deserves to be number 8 in the top 10 of the decade?
Yeah, because they paced out the gameplay in such a beautiful way. You would have these exploration segments where you could explore a town. You know, like a little foresty area. You can find hidden collectibles, you know, the jokes that Ellie and Joel would share. And then you would go through these segments that were just chaotic or, in my case, extremely scary. It took me a long time to finish that game because I got stuck in I was stuck in the segment where there is a flooded room and a generator, and you had to turn on the generator. I think it was in the bottom, like in the hotel basement.
Yeah, then the bloater would come out. And
yes, and it honestly freaked me out so bad that I stopped playing
the
for
sound
months.
design. The sound design there, because I play every game.
I was genuinely afraid.
I play every game with surround sound headphones on, and that section was genuinely stressful because you hear the clickers and you hear them sloshing through the water, and you know that when I turn on this generator, like something's gonna happen.
That's it. You anticipate it, and you're not wrong. Also the part where Joel is strung up with a chain, and he's having to shoot at the clickers running at his face while Ellie's trying to get him down from the chain.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think that for me, perhaps the strongest scene in the game, the scene that man, there's so many scenes in that game. I can't even really say this because as soon as I started to say this, I thought of another scene that impacted me just as strongly. But the scene where Joel gets to Ellie and the character David she's managed to fight him off, and she's grabbed that machete, and she's not just killed him, she's continuing to kill an already dead man. She's just destroying his head with a machete. I think it was a machete.
Yeah.
Man, how real. I mean, that projection of fear, and that she's so afraid that even though it's rationally clear that she's killed him, she's so scared that she's not stopping.
Yeah, and also that we knew what was going to happen,
without
but they
them explicitly saying it.
They didn't have to say it.
Yeah.
They didn't have to show anything.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't even. I mean, it was just beautiful.
You could see it. You could see what was going to happen without them needing to wave it in your face and potentially risk sexualizing the character. And they didn't have to do any of that. They just did it through the acting and through the gameplay. Truly an incredible game that if anyone hasn't played it, man, hopefully we didn't spoil too much. I did warn you though, but an incredible game, definitely deserving of that spot. In my list, it's probably higher.
Well, it did. I feel like our relationship basically blossomed through this game.
Yeah, it was the first thing we played together.
Yeah, I think it was on our first date. Our first date, Shane said, "Hey, I want you to play the intro to this game." And I played it, and then, cried a little bit because I just watched someone's daughter die in his arms.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm crying in front of this guy on my first date.
But that was exactly like that.
You're like, I'm going to test her.
I can't say that I wanted that to happen, but I guess I did, because when I played the prologue, I definitely teared up, and then I had to go to work. I had slow internet at that point, and not to mention that PlayStation Network's downloads are just horrendously slow.
Yeah.
So I'd waited until the store updated so I could start my download at 2 o'clock in the morning or some stupid shit. And then I got up early because I was like, I got to play the intro to this game. So I got up early before I went to work, and I played the intro to the game that played that prologue, and I had to stop and go to work. So the prologue ends, and, she's died in his arms. And I had to put down the controller, and I was like, okay, now I got to go to work for 8 hours or 9 hours.
And think about this.
And I was like, holy shit, what did I just play? It hit me hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Game starts off hard, and it knows when to pull the punches, and it knows when to hit you again. It knows when to surprise you. Yeah. I don't think there's much more we need to say on The Last of Us. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for today's sponsor, DJB, on YouTube, as well as the Side Project podcast. Thank you guys for supporting the show. You can find links to both of them in the show notes or on the Friends of SIL blog at scaryifliteral.com. Head on over to scaryifliteral.com for all the links to our YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, etc. We're getting ready to open up a YouTube membership, so that will be a great way for you to support the show. It's going to start off $1.99, and it'll get you shout-outs on different videos. So that'll be a great thing to consider doing if you're able to support us. Keep in mind that I'm currently doing this stupid thing as my full-time job for some reason. So help me out with that. So, yeah. Thank you for joining me today, Jessi, as always. My name is Shane. This was Podcast Revived, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.